My name is Katie and I'm autistic. In this video, I'm going to be reviewing the new movie Music that was released in February of 2021 that was directed by the singer Sia and starred Maddie Ziegler, Kate Hudson, and Leslie Odom Jr. The movie is supposed to be a championing of autism and to bring support and awareness to the autistic community. But as someone with autism, it is the most horrifying and disgusting display of mockery I have ever seen. One of the first and the biggest complaints about the movie before it even came out was the casting of Maddie Ziegler in the lead character of Music, because Music is autistic and Maddie is not. And some people will say, well, she's an actor, she's playing a role, what's the big deal? But autism is not just a role. It's my identity as an autistic person. And there is no way for a non-autistic person to play autistic without it being a caricature and a mockery. A big part of that is that the mannerisms and the characteristics and the little tics that neurotypical people use to play autistic are the same tics that people use to make fun of autistic people, to bully autistic people. So seeing it up again on screen, well-meaning or not, will only remind someone of the ways that they were bullied. And I'm sure that that's not anybody's intention, but the intention doesn't matter if it's doing harm. Along that same line, you cannot convince me that a non-autistic actor can play autistic better than an autistic. The logic of that just doesn't track. And in a movie like this, which is set in our world in modern time, why wouldn't you want it to be as realistic as possible? And to make it the most realistic it can be, you should hire an actor that actually experiences what the character is going through. And in this case, that it would be an actor with autism. And to be clear, I do not blame the actor Maddie Ziegler at all. It is not her doing. She was 14 when the project started, a minor by any definition of the word. In addition to that, given how closely weaved her career is with Sia and their relationship, I do not see any scenario in which she would have been capable of saying no. That being said, it's not about her. It's not really about any of the actors who play autistic characters. It's not about them. It's not really their responsibility. It's on the directors and it's on the people casting the movie. It is their responsibility to cast people consciously. And yes, any actor who has previously or currently plays an autistic character or a disabled character could say, yeah, this isn't the role for me. This should go to somebody else. But in the grand scheme of things, they're doing their job. They're maybe trying to put food on their table, trying to keep a roof over their head. They're just doing their job. They're just doing what they're told to do. That's it. Could they do better? Yes. But the people who need to do better, whose responsibility it truly is to be doing better, is the directors and the people casting, because without them, this wouldn't have happened at all. In response to the criticism surrounding Sia's casting Maddie as the lead character instead of an autistic actor, Sia stated that she had tried casting an autistic actor, but that the actress had found it too stressful and uncomfortable, and so she cast Maddie. And while that seems innocuous on the surface, the bottom line of that little story is that Sia and the rest of the cast and the crew and the production staff and everybody could not make this production and the set comfortable and accommodating for the autistic actor in a movie about autism? Think about that for a second and tell me if it makes sense, because I don't think it does. Something else that is very distressing about this movie is the connection and the involvement of the group known as Autism Speaks. And for anybody who isn't aware, Autism Speaks claims to be a support group for autistic people, but in reality, it's an autism hate group. And that sounds extreme, I'm sure, but it is the truth. The rhetoric of Autism Speaks is all about curing autism, fixing and getting rid of autism so that it doesn't exist anymore. But there is no cure for autism, and there doesn't need to be a cure for autism. Autism isn't a disease or a sickness. It's just a different way of looking at the world. And I, as an autistic person, I am not broken and in need of fixing. The only difference between you and me is that while everybody else is going through the square door, my brain goes through the star door. And it's so much more fun. Sia has also said that she never referred to Music, the main character, as disabled. But there's nothing wrong with using the term disabled. It's not a dirty word, it's a descriptor. It's accurate. And to imply that using the term disabled is bad is to say that there's something wrong with being disabled, which is the definition of ableism. Sia has also used functioning language to describe Music, the main character. Functioning language is literally the terms high and low functioning, and these terms are wildly inaccurate to describe autistic people. So is the term severe, because there isn't really severity. Everyone has their own little tics, but autism presents differently in everyone. There's no one way to be autistic. Something that you might hear is, if you know a person with autism, you know one person with autism. It's always different in every person. But high functioning creates an idea of someone who has no problems, who autism doesn't really affect, who doesn't need any help. Whereas low functioning creates an idea of someone who is a complete invalid, who can't take care of themselves in any way, who can't even go to the bathroom by themselves. In both cases, it would be wrong. Someone who would be described as high functioning still needs help, still has things that they struggle with. And someone low functioning still thinks, is still aware of what's going on, is still aware when you're making fun of them. Just because that person maybe needs more help doesn't mean they're less. In response to continuing criticism made about the movie before its release, Sia stated that she had 2 people on the spectrum advising her at all times. But here's the thing. A movie is a gargantuan process with hundreds of people involved. And you're telling me out of all of those hundreds of people, only 2 were autistic. And that just doesn't seem right. And as people continued to criticize the movie, Sia then posted that she cast 13 neuroatypical people and 3 trans folks, and not as effing prostitutes or drug addicts, but as doctors, singers, and nurses. The implication being that in real life and in other movies, autistic and trans people are not cast as doctors, singers, and nurses, and are only cast as sex workers and drug addicts, which is degrading to sex workers and people struggling with addiction and autistic people and trans folks. And as well as being morally wrong, it's also factually inaccurate. There are autistic singers, doctors, nurses. There are trans singers, doctors, nurses, drug addicts, And prostitutes can become singers, doctors, and nurses. All of these people are just as valid as everybody else and are as deserving of respect as anyone else. And along that same line, the post makes it seem like autistic and trans people should be grateful to Sia for casting them in this quote unquote more reputable light. And now we come to Sia's interview with Variety. Sia stated that Maddie expressed multiple times that she was uncomfortable with the role and that she was concerned people would think she was making fun of them. Sia's only response to this was, "I won't let that happen," which is dismissive of Maddie's very real feelings and very real concerns, especially given the criticism the movie was already receiving before it came out. Sia also said that she wanted the movie to be Rain Man the musical with girls. But Rain Man has always received criticism for its depiction of autism. And it gets so much worse. The interviewer said that because the character of Music is non-vocal, that she is basically an inanimate object, that she's like a wig, to which Sia agreed. These people compared a human being to an inanimate object. That is wrong no matter how you look at it. In the movie, there are also these outtakes, for lack of a better term, that we are supposed to assume are in Music's mind, which, to begin with, plays into the stereotype that autistic people are trapped in their own mind, which is incorrect. But aside from that, these other worlds that the characters go into would be so overwhelming. All of the flashing lights, the bright colors all over the place, all the movement, and just everything all at once would be so incredibly overwhelming. I was watching the movie in a fully lit room on a tiny laptop screen, and I was still getting overwhelmed. Just watching the trailer, I was getting overwhelmed. I could not imagine how overwhelming that would be in a dark theater. In addition to that, the outtakes don't make any sense. They don't appear to be connected in any way to Music or really to the storyline for the most part. They seem to be just a vehicle for a new song and dance number, written, of course, by Sia. The worst of all of them, though, is one of the scenes where Music is led by a character in a black and white box mask into a makeover. It's literally Sia fixing the autistic character. What is possibly the most controversial aspect of this movie, even more than the casting of Maddie Ziegler as the main character when she is not autistic, is the use of prone restraint multiple times on the autistic main character. Prone restraint is literally shoving someone into the ground face down, and it is used on Music multiple times. They actually refer to it as crushing her with love, which is disgusting for a number of reasons. Prone restraint has caused the deaths of autistic people. I cannot stress enough how dangerous it is. Restraint of any kind is an absolute last resort. And when I say last resort, I mean the person is in life-threatening danger to themselves or someone else, which is unbelievably rare. Even if an autistic person is mid-meltdown and quote-unquote lashing out physically, they're not trying to hurt you. They're just trying to expel everything that is so overwhelming to them. It's not about you at all. They're probably not even aware that you're there, and they're absolutely not trying to hurt you. But there are so many steps that can be taken before it is necessary to restrain someone. starting with getting rid of the overwhelming stimuli. If they're in a room and the lights are too bright, turn off the lights. The music is too loud, turn off the music. There's too many people. Either remove the people if at all possible, or remove the person. If the person is going to start throwing things, remove things that can be thrown. But the absolute last resort is restraint. And if it has to happen, it should be done by someone who knows what they're doing. And that was not what was happening in the movie. The characters absolutely did not know what was going on. Kate Hudson's character absolutely didn't, as is evident by the fact that when it first happens, she's asking the other character what they're doing. And then in a few scenes later, she's doing the very same thing. She is pushing Maddie into the ground. And if you want to make the argument that Leslie Odom Jr.'s character knows what he was doing or was trained because he says that his brother is autistic, fine. We can go down that road for the sake of the argument. Although, if that is the case, it should have been made much clearer. But even if his character does know what he was doing, Kate Hudson's character did not. It is not okay. And it creates this idea that the appropriate way to deal with someone having a meltdown is to restrain them, which is not helpful in any way. If I was mid-meltdown and someone tried to restrain me, that wouldn't help. It would only make it worse. That would just be one more thing my brain has to deal with, in addition to all the other things that have already overwhelmed me. Restraint is not okay. It is not an appropriate way to deal with a meltdown. Period. The one and only, even remotely good thing about this movie is the fact that Sia put herself in it as a tone-deaf celebrity. And I don't mean that's good, like that's a good thing that she did. I mean, it's just so horribly, morbidly ironic that it's the only even remotely satisfying thing I took out of that movie. Because it's just, it's so ridiculous. At the end of the day, I can't make you not watch the movie, but at least if you do, you are going in with the awareness of all of the controversies and all of the danger that surrounds this movie, because it is dangerous to me and to people like me. And at the very, very least, you will know what you're getting yourself into. If at all possible, I implore you to not give any money or support or screen time to this movie that somehow managed to get 2 Golden Globe nominations, which is disgusting. I can't make you do anything, but I'm asking you, please be conscious of the media you're consuming.